The wind howled through the jagged peaks, carrying with it the whispers of an ancient curse. Few dared to venture into the heart of the cursed mountains, where the sky loomed dark and the land remained frozen in an eternal twilight. It was said that those who wandered too close would hear the sorrowful cries of a woman, bound in chains, waiting for salvation that would never come. Elias had heard the stories all his life. The villagers spoke of the woman trapped upon the highest peak, a creature of ethereal beauty and despair, punished by the gods themselves. They warned him, like they had warned all travelers before him, to stay away. But Elias was not like the others. A scholar and wanderer, he sought the truths hidden beneath myths. And so, with little more than a pack upon his back and determination in his heart, he set forth toward the forbidden mountain. The journey was treacherous. Snow fell in relentless waves, blinding him as he climbed higher, each step heavy with the weight of the biting cold. The deeper he traveled, the more the air hummed with an eerie energy, as though the mountain itself breathed, watching his every move. Then, on the third night, as he set camp beneath a rocky overhang, he heard it. A voice, delicate as frost-kissed silk, yet burdened with sorrow. It wove through the wind, calling, beckoning. Elias's pulse quickened. He followed the sound, drawn as though by an unseen force, until he reached the summit. There, bathed in the pale glow of the moon, she stood, or rather, she hung. Chains of silver wrapped around her wrists, binding her to the jagged rock behind her. Her gown, once regal, was now tattered by time, the fabric fluttering like ghostly wisps. Hair as dark as the void cascaded over her shoulders, her luminous violet eyes brimming with something Elias could not name. She did not flinch as he approached, nor did she cry out. Instead, she watched him with the patience of someone who had seen lifetimes pass in solitude. "You hear me?" she whispered, her voice laced with astonishment. "You see me?" Elias swallowed hard. "Who are you?" "A prisoner." Her gaze flickered to the chains, their silver surface pulsating faintly. Elias could feel the magic humming within them, old and powerful. He hesitated before stepping closer, his fingers itching to touch them. "Don't," she warned. "These chains are bound by ancient laws. They cannot be broken." Elias studied them. "Then how are they forged?" Her lips parted, surprise flickering across her features. "You ask questions no other human has dared. I am not like the others." A shadow of a smile graced her lips, fleeting as the wind. "Then perhaps you deserve the truth." She spoke of a time long before mortals walked the earth, of gods and celestial beings, of a war waged in the heavens. She was one of them, a daughter of the stars, cursed for an act of defiance. She had loved where she was forbidden to love, and for that, she was condemned to eternity upon this mountain, waiting for a release that would never come. Elias listened, enthralled. And as the night stretched on, he found himself drawn to her not just by curiosity, but by something deeper, something unspoken. When dawn broke, he reached for the chains despite her protests. The moment his fingers brushed against the silver, a surge of energy coursed through him. The metal burned, searing into his skin, but he did not pull away. Instead, he gritted his teeth and held on. The chains trembled. Cracks spread along their length, and with a final, deafening shatter, they broke. A silence fell over the mountain, heavy and charged. The woman gasped, collapsing forward into Elias's arms. The cold that had clung to the air dissipated, replaced by something warm, something alive. She looked up at him, awe and disbelief shining in her celestial gaze. "You set me free." And as the first rays of sunlight touched the peak, the mountain itself seemed to exhale, the weight of centuries lifting at last. Elias held her trembling form as the mountain sighed beneath them, releasing centuries of sorrow into the cold morning air. The woman, this celestial being, grasped his arms, as though afraid to believe in her own freedom. "What now?" Elias asked, his voice hushed. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply as if tasting the world anew. I do not know. The curse is broken, but I have been bound for so long. The wind carried the scent of pine and distant rain, a stark contrast to the timeless chill that had encased her prison. Elias studied her, watching as her fingers flexed, testing their newfound liberty. What is your name? He asked gently. She hesitated before answering. Seraphis. A name ancient and celestial, heavy with meaning. Elias nodded. Seraphis, we should descend. The mountain is no longer your prison. But as he turned toward the path downward, a deep tremor rumbled beneath their feet. The ground cracked, and from the jagged edges of the summit, shadows began to rise. Dark, shifting forms clawed their way free from the mountain's heart, their eyes burning with the same silver glow as the shattered chains. Seraphis tensed. No! They were waiting! Elias's breath hitched. Who? The keepers of the bindings. They do not forgive. They do not forget. The figures solidified into humanoid wraiths, their cloaks swirling like smoke. One stepped forward, its hollow voice resonating with ancient authority. The chains are broken. The punishment was eternal. Now, another must take her place. Elias instinctively stepped between Seraphis and the wraiths. No! The curse was unjust. She was punished for love. The wraith's empty gaze turned to him. It matters not. Balance must be maintained. A soul must remain bound. Seraphis clutched Elias's arm. We must leave. Now! Elias nodded and grabbed her hand. They ran, descending the mountain as the wraiths gave chase, their forms shifting like mist and shadow. The path twisted beneath them, the mountain resisting their escape. Rocks crumbled, the cold returned with an unnatural fury, and the very air turned heavy with the weight of the ancient sentence. As they neared the base, a chasm yawned before them. The only way across was a narrow bridge of ice, fragile and thin. Seraphis turned, raising her hands, and the air shimmered. A burst of celestial energy pulsed from her palms, forcing the wraiths back momentarily. Go! She urged Elias. Cross! He hesitated. What about you? I will not let them take you. The wraith surged again, and Elias had no choice. He ran across the bridge, his heart pounding. The ice groaned under his weight, cracking as he reached the other side. He turned just in time to see Seraphis leap, her form glowing with otherworldly light. But just as she landed, a wraith lashed out, spectral chains shooting from its fingertips. Elias lunged forward, grabbing Seraphis's hand and pulling with all his strength. The chain snapped away, dissolving into nothingness. A deafening cry echoed through the valley as the wraiths recoiled, their forms unraveling into streams of darkness. One by one, they vanished, the curse losing its last grip upon the world. Silence followed. The sun now shone upon the mountain's peak, no longer shadowed by eternal twilight. Seraphis collapsed into Elias's arms, her breath ragged but steady. It's over, he whispered. She looked up at him, something like wonder in her violet eyes. You defied them. He smiled, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face. I told you, I'm not like the others. For the first time in centuries, Seraphis laughed, a sound like chimes in the wind. Hand in hand, they turned from the cursed mountain, stepping into a world where freedom, at last, was theirs to claim.